So today I will be discussing about the first things to be done before you start interpreting a chart. There are certain things you need to do before you start interpreting the chart. Just like I don't know if you have said this before, but I should have said this prior before now. That geomancy is not just an ordinary chart and casting sowing is seed. What I mean by sowing the seed is when you are doing your hand like this now to bring about a geometric table. Those things are not child plays. It is a spiritual communications. You understand? But so that is why before you even start casting a chart, before you start casting your chart, one of the first thing you need to do is to observe some prayer, do some prayer, blah 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 like that. You should know if you learn geometry thoroughly, because in this current modern world or this current practice, we will just spread the chart and start casting without necessarily doing some things. You don't know what is happening, but if you know, I believe you won't do it that way again. So either you do those recitation, do those prayer before you cast at all, or you didn't do that recitation before you can. That doesn't stop your chart from answering the question you want it to answer. It doesn't stop it, but there are some implication. Probably will be explaining that in some other day. But the truth is that it doesn't affect you getting the answer or not. Then I stand by. So we might be explain. I might explain it in some other day, and if time permit, I may explain it here. But that is not the primary purpose of this particular discussion. So the primary purpose of this discussion is to explain one of the things to first do before interpreting your chart. Is different from one of the things you need to do before you start casting. You know, in Eastern geomancy, there are things you will draw on the distance before you start casting. There are different things. Sometimes you will recite something. Those one that is before you even lay your hand to cast. That one is for that. But immediately you cast finish, you self cast the chart finish. There are things you need to do before you start interpreting whatever those charts say. But even if you don't say this, even if you don't say this, even if you don't practice what I'm about to tell you, it doesn't mean to affect your but there are some spiritual implications. Let me give an example where this one is usually more popular. It is this one I'm talking about is usually practiced by high people who understand the deep root of geomancy, who understand but this is usually also practiced in Ifa. That is why you see in Ifa tradition, in Ifa practice. Once they throw once they cast their chart, before they even tell you one or two things, they first of all make some spoken words. They first of all say some things so that in order to bring some respect to the Orumila that brought it, or to bring some respect to the instruction of that thing that comes over. There are different reasons they do it. So that recitation, those things they usually say, that same things applies in geomancy too. We just don't usually, not we, many people just don't usually do it. And that's its own implication. You understand? I repeat, this thing I'm talking about is usually what, if people don't usually joke with this. Before they say anything, mostly they will first of all give respect to, depend on the figure that comes out, depend on what. So and if a person can interpret it without first of all doing all those spoken word, all those things that usually say before they start to tell you something, they can do that. But that is, they see it as something that is ultimate before you do it, because they know the implication. So that doesn't mean that if they did not say all those words, they can interpret Ifa's message without saying all those things. But everything has a steps, everything has a way of doing it. If they don't do it, if it is not done, that doesn't mean that whatever they want to say will not be correct. But there are some implications which we might, if time permit, we might explain them. If time does not permit it, probably it will be another discussion, or we might just leave it out. So now in this, we want to explain how that same thing they are practicing there, how it is applicable in this one. You understand that? So it is the application of this thing. I want to digress. If you notice, let me even say something. If you notice, some people before they will cast if you see some people sound, you will see that they will put some things, some mystical something on this thing. You understand that? Just because they want to bypass some things. It's not as if those ones you are seeing, it's not as if they did not put those mystical something you usually see on the sand. It is not as if they did not put that sand cannot. Of course, I want to believe that if you are a geomancer, you will have casted a child without putting those things they usually put on this thing. You will have done that before. You understand? But this same thing that I'm about to tell you, it is the same thing they are trying to bypass by putting those things. You understand? So you are not putting anything on your sand. Your sand is as clean as anything. You are not putting. So this is one. If you don't know that they usually put something on the something, because when you begin to put it, people begin to see that, well, maybe you are being kind of mystical or something like that. You understand? But you are coming for divination. You don't know that, well, it is mystic or mystery that you are coming here to unravel. You understand? But at least I just want to explain to you there are different ways of doing things. One of the ways of doing this particular thing I want to explain to you is by putting all those things. Some people usually put on their sign. One of the ways of doing it is by putting it that way. Is by putting all those. Some people will put. I don't know. The okay. I want to remember the English word for what I want to say. I think that thing is. Some people will put alligator pepper on their sand. Some people will put there's something called cat eyes. Usually have red and black something. They usually put there. So when people put too many, so all those jantis. I'm not calling jantis, so as you call jantis. No jantis, so they know what they are doing. But some people usually say that, well, they don't know how to reach out. They don't know it. Those things rubbish. Some people usually say that. Do you understand? But those things not. They know what they are doing. And I repeat that for the fact that they did not put those things there, that doesn't mean that whatever they want to say on it, that doesn't affect it. But there are some spiritual implication about them themselves, not even the chart. Because you are bringing the whole world, so many events before you. You have to prepare. It's just like this thing I want to show you is like, when some elderly people want to drink alcohol, they first of all put something inside a cup, they will not pour it on the ground. You understand? So this thing is basically, let me even tell you what it means. This thing I'm about to tell you, let me say it in Yoruba. It's called Ijubaile. That sorry, like giving respect. Some people call it what? Soften the ground. If I say it in Yoruba, it will be more understandable. I'm trying to use an English word that is similar to what I want to portray. You understand? So if you see anybody putting all those things, don't just call it. If you can call him mystic, that's for you. He himself knows what. I just want to make him understand that they know what they are doing. But if you know you cannot do that, because there are different ways of doing one particular thing. You understand? So it is one of the ways of doing it. But if you don't want to do it, then you have to perform some action. So that thing that you need to do before you start reading. There are things you need to do before you even cast. I'm not talking about that one. Like prayer or those drawing of something. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking immediately you have finished casting your 16 geomancy house is finished. First things you need to do. One of it, before I say the one I want to, one of it is maybe, let me just go straight to the point. So without debating, I just give you an example where this thing I want to explain to where it is being used. It is people usually do it before they were. Even apart from that, in normal human reality, if you meet with an elders who understand some spiritual something, before they will drink an alcohol or something, they first of all pour some quantity on the floor, at least to first of all. So that's all. So now, and I want to show you in the case of geomancy how to do that same thing. You understand? But without necessarily going too mystical. But if you see people putting those things, I'm not saying you should condemn them. If you condemn here, you are condemning yourself, because that same thing is what I'm about to tell you that you should do. And don't forget, even if I tell you this one, I'm telling you, that doesn't mean anything, but it has some implication on your own life, not on the chart. Doesn't mean the chart will be right or no. It is you that you are inviting some beings, some higher beings. You understand? But don't let me go deeper. So it is only when you ask questions or you try to probably that will lead me to explain some other things. You understand? But it's only when you ask some question that might lead me into, so because question will make you understand some other things. You understand? But at this one, let's proceed so that this will not be too. So immediately first of all, this chart before me is not really a chart. This is a tasking table. This is a tasking table. This one before me is called tasking table. If you look at it, this is not a chart. If it is a chart, what's supposed to be in this is house 5. What's supposed to be here is 1, 2, 2, 1. That's actually supposed to be here. So this is not a chart. This is not a table. This is just a tasking table. Tasking table. And this tasking is called sage tasking. Sage / you can call it sage tasking, you can call it elaloro, you can call it elaloro tasking. So anyone you call it, depending on how if you know how to pronounce elaloro, you can call it elaloro tasking. You can also call it sage. So it is sage / elaloro tasking. I believe you should have come across this before. So how do you? So this is a tasking, not a table. I'm just trying to emphasize that. This is a tasking, not a geometry chart. This is a tasking table, and the name of the tasking is sage tasking. Sage tasking. Now, or you call it a lot of tasking. So now, So let's say you have casted your rich chart finish. So let's say, so in order to know the first thing you need to do before you start interpreting or see things on the chart, so you first of all go to what? House one. After you have checked your maze and everything, you have confirmed everything. So first thing you need to do, go to house one. The figure in house one will tell you the first thing you need to do. First thing you need to do. And if it is Kausaji, this figure is called Kausaji. This figure is called Kausaji. And we don't know what Kausaji is. It's called what is it called? Pua. P-U-E-R. That's pua in Latin words. It's called pua in Latin word. So Kausaji is an Arabic word for this particular figure. And if you don't know pua, you don't know Kausaji. This one is called Irete in Ifa language. This one in particular figure is called Irete. So if it is this particular figure that land in your house one, it says that the word. Let's say if you are a Muslim, you know what is used to Muslims that they usually put their head on the floor. So what you normally do, what the first thing, first of all, go and land your head, go and use it. No, I'm not saying you use your head to hit the floor. Just like no, do you know the way normal the Muslim usually they would go and use their head to touch the floor. That is the first thing you if it is couch, that is the thing you will do. If this one is what is there. So if you cannot put because there are some people that they cannot put because there are some human beings then, but don't let me go far. If you cannot put your head, you feel like your head cannot touch ground. There's another thing you can do if this is difficult. You go and do what can I call ibori in English? Okay, the English word for that is you will go and appease your head. You go and do what? Appease your head. Head appeasement. That is before you start. So I think the easiest way is just to put your head to put your head or to use within seconds. You do it, that start. But if you like, maybe your head no the touch. If your head you don't used to use your head to touch. Another thing is you can do is to go and do a head appeasement. Go and bow here. You understand? But you go and appease your head. That is if it is kausaji. I hope this video will not be too long because I want to explain all the system figure. So I want to believe that this video will not be too long so that I will be able to cover the whole of the system figure. So I've talked about council, that is the first thing. So if it is Kopto Dahila that is in house one is the determinant of the house one is what you are concerned with, that the first thing you need to do, you understand, but is house one. So the figure in house one. The figure in house one. So the figure in house one is what you are concerned with. So if it is outside, that's what you do. If it is sometimes some people use house two to also do this same thing I'm talking about, but it's a different case. This same thing I'm talking about that you go to house one to check. Sometimes some people will not check house one. It is house two that will determine this. But in this case, because this one, the geomancy I'm explaining to you is a public geomancy. It is not, if it is individual geomancy that I'm talking about, house two is what you will look at in order to do what I'm talking about here. So we have geomancy of Batini and we have geomancy of Soiri. This one is a Soiri geomancy. You understand? But this is a Soiri geomancy. So that's why I'm telling you, if it is personal, individual geomancy, house two is what you will look at. But for this discussion is house one. So if it is cup to dial that is in house two, what you need first thing is to do is that if before you started casting the chart, maybe you did not collect any money from the querent. Before you interpret that chart, you need to collect money from that querent. If you do not collect money before you start casting the chart, you need to collect money from that before you start interpreting it. If Queen doesn't have money to pay for it, that means that chart is not meant to be interpreted. Just leave it. Don't say anything about it. Do you understand? That is what if Cop to dial. But let's say in the beginning, Querent has already paid you for the service you are doing. From the money that he has paid you, from that money that he has paid you as a geomancer, take out of it, give it to him. Not necessarily, you don't need to give Querent everything. Except you don't like money. If you don't like money, you give it's either way, any way you like it. Don't let me misquote. Don't let me misquote the situation. If you, based on your own personality, maybe you don't like money or you don't want money, you can give the whole money back to the querent. You understand? But if you like money, out of the money the querent gave you, take part of it, give it back to the querent, the person asking the question, the owner of the question. You understand? But let's say you are the geomancer, you are the one that asked that question yourself, and this same figure asks it. This one is saying that the money that if the person did not give you money, don't bother to to interpret it. Ask him to give you money. If he can give you money, you then interpret the chart. But if he cannot give you money, sorry, let's say he has given you money before you started casting the chart, then take from the money that is with you, you give to the person out of it. Do you understand? But not even out of it. It's either you give the person out of it or you give the everything back to the person. It's now your own choice. But let's say the person did not give you money and those again, let's say, let me because this I don't want any mistake from you. Let's say the person has even give you money, but that money maybe you have immediately spent that money. You have immediately spent money because you have to take from that same money the person give to you, not from another money. But let's say immediately he gave you, maybe you have spent that money before you don't see this figure, before you finish. You know that sometimes maybe somebody has paid you money if you have been practicing this thing very well. You know, sometimes they will give you money, maybe something, maybe you have children, you have kids at home. Maybe that children has taken that money, you maybe it's your child, and you have used the money to go and spend that money. That means don't interpret the chart at all. Because it's that same money he gave you that you must give the person. That's why it's not usually good you quickly spend the money. But if you spend it, there's still a way out. Don't put yourself on a unnecessary box or unnecessary cage or unnecessary something. You understand? There's still, once you are in a problem, just ask people who you think they are in the same that line. They will enlighten you. Don't think that is it. See, there's no finality to anything. God is the only one that has finality of everything. There's no finality to anything. If you understand, God is the only. And second, another apart from the fact that God is the only is the finality to everything. Sometimes you too, you are the finality. If your mind has been sealed, if your mind has been believed that something is impossible, don't think that it is God. You yourself, you are the first before God. You understand? If your intention, your intention behind that thing you are doing is not clean, don't go and run to your God. You have to run to yourself. Clean your own minds first. You understand? But so, which means that, well, let's say if that money you have spent it before this one comes here, or something has happened, you have started, or the money has been lost, you don't know. You know, something something strange might happen. You may put money here, maybe I'll put money here, and you don't know how the money disappear. There's something that happen. You don't see the money. That means that we don't bother to interpret that chart. You understand? But I think there's still something about this particular thing that I want to say that I'm not remember. Maybe if I remember another time, but that is just that for now. So maybe if I still remember another thing. So let's jump to this. If it is German, come to that. That is, I'm talking about if this one is now one. No, I told you that one. Instead of using, no, we are talking about any of these figures. I've talked about Kausaji. I've talked about Koptu Daila. This figure is called Koptu Daila, and that is Koptu Daila in Eastern Geomancy. In Latin, it is called Acquisition. Why in Ifa it's called what is it called? What is this one called? Ofun. This particular figure is called Ofun. You understand, ba? This one is called Ofun. So I said, I'm not saying if it is found, I'm touching house 2. I'm not talking about if it is found. If it is found in house 1, what I say initially is that sometimes some people don't use house 1 to determine all this thing I'm saying. Sometimes they use house 2 to say, once they find it is house 2 that is there. But before you use house 1 or before you use house 2, it depends on what you are practicing. Is it public geomancy you are practicing or personal geomancy? But that one is another something. I don't want to. But this one I'm talking about is public geomancy. The one that anybody can teach anybody, for anybody to easily understand, or for public, for that is just that. Don't let me make this talk too much. Do you understand? So that is for our house too. So if you find German in this house 1, this is called German. This figure is called German in Eastern Geomancy. While in Latin it is called Populus in Latin. While in Ifa it is called Ijiogbe. Yes, this one is called Ijiogbe. In Ifa it is called Ijiogbe. While in Arabic it is called German. While in Latin it is called Populus. So if this particular figure I'm touching land in this house 1 here, so it means that before you interpret that chart, first of all carry that chart, that table, that thing there, first of all put it by the side, rest. Take some rest before you then interpret that chart. But this particular figure is a two-mouth something. It's a two-mouth something. This particular figure, when you find it, it's a two-mouth something. It's saying two things at the same time. Now, one of the things he's saying is that when it is found in house 1, it means that you first of all need to rest, chill, relax before you interpret that chart. You can just put the table or the chart, even if the quadrant is before you, expecting to say something. Just first of all put it by the side before you interpret. That's what he's saying. Another thing he's saying that he's saying two things. Another thing, but that thing look as if it is contradicting. But let me say it first. He's saying that before you interpret that chart, he's saying that you should interpret that chart with immediate effect as fast as possible. That is what this one is talking about. He's saying you should interpret that with immediate effect. It looks as if it's contradicting, isn't it? That's saying this one. He's saying that you should first of all relax before you interpret. that chart. You understand? It's also saying that you should interpret the chart as soon as with immediate effect. So the question now is that since this one is saying two things at the same time, then what should you do? Isn't it? Wouldn't that be the question? He's saying you should relax before you. This one is not saying that you should do it immediately. Isn't it? So this is what usually determine the case of this particular figure when you are confronted with that situation. He's saying that there are sometimes you are interpreting somebody comes to you, come and ask you a question, and you are already tired, and the person is now asking you a question about it. Maybe because it's a person you respect, somebody you don't want to, maybe just somebody you respect, or somebody force you into interpreting that chart, or the person lure you or use cunning way to lure you. Do you understand? But it means that out of that option, what you would first of all relax before you interpret that chart. But let's say you are at your own volition, everything is fine, not that he forced you, nothing, everything is fine. No, maybe the person didn't come to you when you are busy. It didn't come to you when you are busy. It means that immediately you see that chart, interpret it immediately. But let's say when I think I found the right word. Let's say the person comes to you at the time when you are very busy. It means that before you interpret that chart, if the person comes to you at the time when you are busy, it means that first of all, relax, chill your mind, do whatever before you then interpret that chart. But let's say the person comes to you that time when you are not busy, everything is fine. Interpret that chart immediately. So that is what this particular saying. Let me talk on this one before I will now continue the rest, because this video will get too long. Because if it doesn't get too long, that means I will rush some things. I will rush it so that I will not see it. So and I don't want to rush it so that you understand it much more better. So let me talk about this one before I will now. And this video is also getting too long, because if the video is getting too long now, by the time you want to upload it, now, it might be slow. I might want to do some other thing that will not allow me to do it on time, because the network might be bad. So the network connection is slow. So that is why I will need to cut it. So let me just explain this one before I will now cut it and continue some other time. So now, if it is this figure is called what is it? Yeah, I have a call. So I'm coming. So, I was sorry, I received a call. That was why Yoruba, my own, so that at least you know that I'm a Yoruba person. So, in case you don't know. So what I was saying is that I wanted to explain this particular figure, if it appear in house 1. This particular figure is called, what is it called in Latin? It's called Amish. Is it? Yes, Amishu. This particular figure is called Amishu in Latin. In Latin, that is the Latin word for this particular figure. But in Eastern geomancy, it is called Kobdu Karaj. This particular figure called Kobdu Karaj in Eastern geomancy. Why in Ifa people usually call this particular figure Ose. This particular figure is called Ose. This particular figure is called Ose. Why in Latin it's called Mishu, which usually signify lost. Do you understand? I guess that's one of the reasons why this person that called me, because I'm not sure he's going to patronize me for what he called me for. So I'm sure maybe because I was talking, this particular figure is proving itself right. So, but that's not where we are going. That's just by the way. That doesn't mean I can buy you. That's just a by the way something. It doesn't necessarily mean something. So, but where we are going now is that if this figure appears here, what this particular figure usually see when it appears in house 1, let me try to remember first. Sorry, give me some. Let me quickly remember. So, this particular figure usually say that before you interpret that chart, you should use something to rub your hand. So you can use water, and that is first of all go and wash your hand before you interpret that chart. Before you interpret that chart, you first of all go and wash your hand before you interpret that chart. You understand? But though on this particular figure, some people usually say that it's not before you interpret that chart, that this one particular figure look like an exception, that immediately you interpret that chart finish, go and wash your hand. That is, so anyone you then pick, I said, some people say that before you interpret that chart, wash your hand. So people now say that no, it is not before you interpret this chart that you wash your hand. So immediately you interpret that chart finish, go and wash your hand. But to me, personally, I think what they are doing, the scholar are doing on this particular one is they are doing tefsiri. You know what they call tefsiri? That is using some level of understanding adding some level of understanding to it. Let me put it this way. Because by the time you are interpreting, your hand is already dirty. You understand? So, and if you are interpreting the chart, maybe you go and wash your hand. You understand? So by the time you come back and you want to be interpreting that again, your hand can still dirty. So that's why some people say that, well, you should first of all, it is not when, it's not before you interpret, it is after you have interpreted the chart. That is one of their possible reasons why they said that, well, it is immediately after you interpret that chart. You understand, ba? That, when you say, no, if you go and wash your hand now, you want to touch, your hand will still touch it. So they are thinking that, well, one of these is because you want to clean your hand. Some people also attach some religious reason to it that, well, you will do ablution, blah, 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 like that, also sort of thing. But me, I'm telling you, whichever one you like, pick. Is that that? But this one, just your own function is just make sure you wash your hand before you make sure you wash your hand before or after. You understand? For this particular figure, I'm not talking about the rest. I'm trying to explain. So let me pause it here because the video is getting too long. But I hope you get this particular figure. This figure is saying that, well, before you interpret that chart, go and wash your hand. You understand, ba? Why I said some people say that, well, it is not before that. First of all, interpret that chart, finish, then you go and wash your hand. But whichever one you like, which one you pick, just make sure you pick anyone that you know it is convenient for you. But in a case like this, what is usually good is that, well, if you pick before, maintain before, anytime you see it, wash your hand before. But if you pick is that, well, immediately after you interpret, that is what you should stick to. Do you understand? Well, that is one of the way you can go about that. So let me pause it there. We'll continue because this thing will get too long. Look at what I've only mentioned 4 out of 16. So let me pause it here so that this one will not be too long. Subsequent video will still talk about the rest of the figure. So thank you very much for listening, and I appreciate your time. So try to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you subscribe to my YouTube channel, whenever I make a new video, you have the opportunity to be the first set of people that will see the video. Do you understand? But another thing I also want you to do, apart from subscribe, don't just subscribe and try to always help me share the video so that others can benefit from it. The reason why I'm going to say you should do that is because when you are sharing, you are giving more motivation, more encouragement to do more, to give you more, to explain more. But if you are not doing it, that means you just want me to be feeling reluctant to do it because I have other things to do as well. So you understand? But I usually see a lot of people having a lot of misconception about this thing. That's why I'm making some more clarification so that you can have better understanding about this thing. In fact, you might be one of the people that already know this thing. Maybe I'm by the way reminding you what you already know. So may God be with you. May God be with us. Thank you very much. Share my video. That is one. Subscribe and share. You hear? Thank you very much. May God bless you.